Hi everyone, it's Darlene. Welcome back for another card video. Today I'm using my metallic watercolors to create this leaf card. I've got the Starry Colors by Gonzai Tombi and then the Fine Text set, which I reviewed last week. I also have the Fractile Leaves by Simon Says Stamp and this Give Thanks set also by Simon Says Stamp. I'm going to start by heat embossing this one leaf on black cardstock. This is Stampin' Up! Cardstock using some white powder. I'm using Hero Arts powder. And then I'm going to take the gold from the leftmost side and then the silver from the right. And then from my Fine Tech, I'm just going to be using this third one from the bottom, the green one. It's a really beautiful green. So what I'm going to do is I've got this kind of thin pointy brush. I don't even know what kind it is because the label has peeled off because I left it in the water overnight. So anyway, what I'm going to do first, and I'm going to do this the same way on all these leaves, is I'm going to do kind of a wash, a very light wash over the whole thing at first. Now I realized that I got some gold under the leaf, like around the stem, and I don't want to color that. I forgot. So I just added some water, and then I'm just going to dab this up with a tissue, and the paint comes right off. And it's really shocking how well this Stampin' Up! Black cardstock handles the watercolor, even though it's not watercolor paper. All right, so to add a little interest to these leaves, I'm going to go back in with a second layer and I'm going to randomly color in some of these pieces with a thick layer of this watercolor. So you can see how opaque it gets when you have less water. And as you let the water absorb into the palette, it becomes thicker and thicker. So anyway, so that's all I'm going to do. And then for the next one, this is the silver. I'm going to do a wash here. And I'm doing quite a bit of water to thin out the paint so that I get just a base layer. And then I can go back in and add just more thicker paint in different areas to get two different tones for the leaf. So you can see I kind of went back and forth, and I wish I hadn't added that last little bit. It got a little bit too colored with the silver. But anyway, it's no big deal. So what I'm going to do is go back in here again to color that thick layer of the silver paint. I used black cardstock for two reasons. First, so that I could sort of get a darker version of the little fractal pieces. And then secondly, because these paints look so much better on black cardstock than they look on white cardstock. So I just really love the look of the black in the back. All right, so next I'm going to let that dry and I'm going to take some wood grain paper and I'm taking my black Gonzai Tombi palette from the main 36 count set and I'm just going to create some splatters here. Now you'll notice that I start small, so I start with a little bit of water, so more thick paint, and that's going to give me some smaller splatters. And then I added some more water and dropped it in, and that gave me bigger splatters. So I always start small and then add from there. So once these have dried, I can go ahead and cut them out. I'm just cutting them out with a scissor. And then I'm taking a piece of Neenah Solar White cardstock and I'm going to stamp my banner with some Hero Hues black ink. And my ink pad is a little bit dry, so I'm going to stamp this again, and then I'm going to stamp it one more time, actually 3 times, to make sure I get a really good image with good coverage of this black. I used Hero Arts because it's a very fast drying ink, and I knew I was going to be embossing. So I went ahead and stamped this with some Versamark, and now I put some white embossing powder on, but I realized that even after 15 or 20 minutes, it was still sticking. So I took a brush and I tried to brush it away, but then I realized that there's powder in between the letters and there's just no way. So I went ahead and just brushed the whole thing off and dried up my ink a little bit more. And then I'm testing it here with some clear powder and it's not sticking except where the Give Thanks was stamped. So even with the heat tool, the Versamark was still sticking, but I decided to stamp it one more time with the Versamark to make sure that I had everything perfect, and then I embossed it with some white powder. I cut this out with a scissor. I'm sure there are probably dies, but I don't have them. So I'm going to put some ATG tape runner on the back of my banner, and then I'm going to arrange my leaves the way I want them, and then I'm going to press my banner at the bottom of these leaf stems. So notice when I cut the leaves out, I left a little bit of black around the stem. I just try to cut it as close as I could, but I don't want it to be too thin because it's going to need to be a little sturdy because I'm going to be moving it around here. So once I get them all positioned correctly, I'll just pull that off my craft mat, turn it upside down, and now I'm going to add foam adhesive. These are Stampin' Up! Dimensionals across the whole thing. Now I'm going to show you how I store my gold thread. So here it is in a big tangly mess. It usually takes me 5 minutes to find the end, but this time it was just sticking out. I got lucky. So I'm just going to pull a big string here, and I'm just going to randomly kind of circle it around on my craft mat. So you can see I've got big circles, little circles, and I'm trying to do it a little bit random. And I kind of started in the middle, and I'm just going to leave my ends. I'm just checking here to make sure it looks good. I'm just going to leave my ends just hanging, and I'll deal with those later. I've already taken the release backing off the dimensionals, so I'm just going to kind of hover above my thread here, just positioning it just right. And once I get it, I'm just going to press down, and it is going to stick to my craft mat, and I'll have to pull it up, but it's not going to be that big of a deal. So you can see I'm going to pull it up here. The gold will stick. It's just the areas where the gold is not that it's sticking to my craft mat. So I'm just going to carefully lift this up, and then I'll flip it over to deal with the ends. So what I'm going to do is sort of figure out where the last sticking point was for my thread and just sort of cut it right at that point. So right here is pretty easy. So I just cut that off right there at the end. And then the other one, I don't want it to kind of end facing down. See, I started doing that. I'm like, no, I'm just going to pull it over here, make it circle, make it look like it's circling again, and then cut it off. And then somehow when I flipped it over, some of that gold stuck to my dimensional, so I'm just going to pull it down so it hangs below the banner. Because the gold thread has sort of taken up some of my stickiness on my dimensionals, I'm going to add another layer of dimensionals on top. And this is going to make sure that my gold stays in place, kind of wedged in between 2 layers of dimensionals, and that this whole piece is going to stick to my card. All right, so I took the release backing off, and I'm just going to center it onto my wood grain panel. I'm just kind of moving it around to make sure it's exactly where I want it, and then I'm just going to press the whole thing down. And it really pops up quite high, and it looks really good. So I'm going to put some ATG tape runner on the back of this entire panel and adhere it to a Neenah Solar White card base. You can't see it, but it's underneath there. So that's what I've adhered this panel to. And that is the card for today. So quite a bit of shimmer. It looks really pretty in real life. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.